Hello and welcome to episode 7 of season 1 of the Made for More Monday podcast. Today we shall be looking at breaking barriers. We all face barriers that can keep us from reaching our potential, but God's word is full of examples showing how His power can help us break through every barrier. Amongst many examples, we shall consider the following. Number 1, Joshua and the walls of Jericho. Faith over physical barriers, as seen in Joshua 6. In Joshua 6, God told Joshua and the Israelites to march around the city of Jericho, which was surrounded by enormous walls. From a human perspective, these walls were impossible to overcome. But instead of fighting or giving up, Joshua followed God's instructions. On the seventh day, after marching around the city and shouting as God commanded, the walls of Jericho miraculously fell and they took the city. Sometimes our barriers look unbreakable, but God has a plan. When we trust Him and follow His lead, even the biggest walls in our lives can come down. Number 2, the woman with the issue of blood, breaking through social barriers, as seen in Mark 5:25-34. In Mark 5, we meet a woman who had been suffering from a bleeding condition for 12 years. Because of her illness, she was considered unclean and was isolated from society. But when she heard about Jesus, she dared to break through the crowd and reach out to touch his robe, believing that even a touch would heal her, and it did. Jesus not only healed her, but commended her faith, restoring her both physically and socially. This woman didn't let social stigma stop her from reaching Jesus. Sometimes breaking barriers means stepping out of our comfort zones and pushing past societal expectations to reach what God has for us. Number 3, Peter walking on water, breaking mental barriers, as seen in Matthew 14:22-33. In Matthew 14, Peter and the disciples saw Jesus walking on the water. When Jesus tells Peter to come to him, Peter steps out of the boat and walks on water, something no one else had ever done. But when he began to focus on the wind and waves, he started to sink. Jesus reached out to save him, reminding Peter that faith in him can overcome fear. Many of our barriers start in our minds. Peter reminds us that we can do extraordinary things when we keep our focus on Jesus instead of our fears. Number 4, Paul and Silas in prison, breaking barriers through worship, as seen in Acts 16:16-4. Paul and Silas were jailed for preaching about Jesus, yet they didn't let prison or prison walls stop them or stop their faith. In Acts 16, they prayed and sang hymns, and suddenly an earthquake shook the foundations of the prison, breaking their chains and opening the doors. Their worship not only set them free, but led the jailer and his household to salvation. Worship has the power to break spiritual and physical barriers. When we worship God, even in our darkest moments, He can work in unexpected ways. God has shown us over and over again that He can help us break any barrier, whether it is physical, social, mental, or spiritual. Like Joshua, or the woman with the issue of blood, or Peter, or Paul and Silas, we are called to have faith, to push through obstacles, and to trust God's power. So, what barrier are you facing today? With God, no barrier is unbreakable. Step out in faith, keep your focus on Him, and watch Him do the impossible. Thank you for joining us on this episode that focused on breaking barriers. Remember, with God, every wall in your life can come down.